Stop enjoying yourself. All the Indians, sit down, come on. Only one, no, two. I think we have a third too. Ding ding, no embracing in public, sit down. Ding ding, Hans Herren. Hans Herren, sit down. Hans Herren, sit down. Hopeless. Academics. We ignore everyone. Ding ding. Ding 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 ding. Okay, Hans, sit down. Good boy. Sit. Okay, look, we've had a very long day. I've been asked to chair the session where we pull the discussion groups we've had. With great respect, I was in one group and there were very good talks, very cerebral, lots of really interesting points. But we'll keep this very short so we have more interaction. So can we just have very quickly from, in fact, the group I was in, Jan Willem, oh no, I'm in the wrong one. Where are we? Yeah, where are we? No, Hans, you're the first. Hans, you were the chair of this one. No, this Hans, two Hanses. Oh, the president, what? This Hans, no, this, you first. Quickly report. Quickly report on what happened.
Yes, actually, thank you. We had a rapporteur. So David Abu Dhabi, where is he? So, oh, here. So he will actually report. So.
Bye-bye, Hans. Hello, David.
Thank you very much. Not much. Okay. We had a very interesting session that looked at organic vision. Where do we go from here? And we had three great speakers that you all heard from earlier on. We had Dr. Vantana Shiva, Peggy Myers, and Dr. Banwat Chia. The three really brought out very interesting actions that we should be looking at in the way forward. And very quickly, from Vantana, she had about three things that I picked, which I thought were very important. One, we need to fend or defend local economies. We need more diversified systems, and we need to move away from the notion of commoditization and financialization of agricultural services. I think if we diversify our systems, we are likely to address some of the issues we are seeing today. Secondly, we need to have now the deepest level of contest, and this is the one of paradigm war. We need to wake up, and very practical cases have been already discussed in the meeting as to how we can move away from the current situation and have a complete paradigm shift. And more importantly, we need to have a better understanding of how nature works through diversity. Diversity of species, diversity of approaches, and so on. It is within this diversity that we can embrace one of the most important principles of agroecology. And on this, she underscored, and we do fully agree, that we need to recognize how ecological services are beneficial to us and how we can therefore have nature contribute to the good life that we enjoy. Nature provides services for us and products, and we need to protect it. She also brought up a very important component that we shouldn't trivialize the integrated approaches towards our agroecosystems. There's too much focus on commoditization and financialization of services, but this needs to be relooked at so that we look at the diversity, and possibly we also look at integrated approaches, for example, the integrated pest management. So, solutions lie in keeping the diversity and complexity of our systems. That is the message from Vantana. I hope I captured well your thoughts. Peggy Myers, also, she came up with very practical approaches on how we can move forward. One, there is need for us to talk to the medical or health people. because of this increasing nexus of between nutrition and health, and some of the health complications we are seeing today, which are diet related. So we need to revisit this and get allies within the people in the health sector. So that conversation needs to start urgently. 2, we also need to engage more with faith and religious communities. If we look at some of the values that we espouse within the organic sector and movement, we get a lot of solace, reflection, and thinking more deeply on issues if we can engage with those who also have deeper conscience, deeper reflections. And these are people that are within the faith and religious communities. So we need to reach out and engage with them whenever we have opportunities to do so. Very interestingly, and I expounded on her thoughts, the golfers in the US, she indicated that some of the golf fields are certified organic. But I thought that was a very powerful entry point, because golf is not a game or a sport for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. This is where people who bring about change are. If we can reach them through those forums in the golf areas and spread the message on how we can change the way we do things, it is better. So I just extended the discussion as to who are actually the golfers, and we need to engage with them as well. And she had also a few other things that were very important. And one of the things which was a concern, but not a very practical solution, is of course, like US is one of the biggest countries, as we know, that have a huge power and influence on the agrochemicals. The industry is huge, and we also know that most of the companies, the restaurants are huge, and supermarkets. And these are actually agents of change that we can also engage with as well. They need to be a way of getting and reaching out to this, and especially if we look at it from the side of consumption and how we can look at the diet and health-related issues. And finally, the issue of engaging more with the youth and having more youth involvement, which is also a very important aspect we have seen today with the presence of the youth that we do have. She didn't spare out also the issue of advocacy, which is one of the things that we should be looking at as well. Now, the last speaker was Dr. Bernard Kia. Yes, this is a man that has a lot of experience, over 40 years in the organic movement, and also having taught at the university. He gave a very practical example of how we can move from here, and his example was based on the CKM case. And we also watched a very wonderful movie about the CKM case. And what do we see here? Here we see a group of people, farmers who are very happy, and I think this morning someone talked of people who are compassionate, people who have the passion, and the people who have the drive and the commitment to practice what they believe in. And the farmers in the CKM state, which, as he said, is the first state in the world to go organic. And the success, as somebody asked earlier in the day, what are the success factors of CKM in Egypt? And here we got some cases that illustrate the success that we see in CKM. One is very strong political leadership that is supportive of organic agriculture. The chief minister, who has been in power is now going for his 4th term, or 5th term, he's really celebrated in that state. He has changed the agricultural systems, and he would want to see actually a chemical-free world, not only India, but also the world. That is the vision that he has. He has also supported legislation that supports organic agriculture, and this is actually a very important area, as we know. No government will invest in any program unless it is sufficiently backed up by appropriate policies. Over 65,000 farmers in this state are organic farmers, and have been supported quite well by the government. And it's on the basis of some of the huge achievements that have been realized in the CKM state that they'll be awarded next week, getting the Future World Council. I don't want to talk much about it because it will be mentioned. But this is actually in recognition of the wonderful cases that we've seen. Hans and others asked this morning, or said something like this: we can do it. And I think Hans said it almost 3 or 4 times. We can do it. And someone asked, how can we do it? The example of Sikkim is a very practical case of how this can be done. We are all invited, if we get a chance to do so, to go to Sikkim and see for ourselves on the ground how the people have organized themselves. The farmers are happy, they are making money, and they are going about their business as a community. So Sikkim provides a very good example that we can learn from. A very important discussion came out of this, and I just want to mention a couple of points and then I finish. Thank you, sir.
Africans, you tell them to be short, and it goes on for hours. The British
How many Africans are in this room? let the only African on the stage take a big one. Yes, thank you.
So he gets another 10 minutes.
We haven't had an African on this stage in an international forum, and I wondered whether this was by design or default. And we want to make sure that organic grows globally. So give a chance also to this son of Africa to just say what was said,
Tell us what
because it's part of it. What I do. Okay, thank you very much, but with a light touch. All right, so there we go. I think there's so much that was said, and I'll be very happy to draft my notes and give those who have contributed to this. But a very interesting discussion that also came up, which was actually interesting. It was from the youth, the students. Some of them saying, hey, look, we are in an institution that is grounded in training in conventional agriculture. We've also seen our parents do this for many years. How can we change this? And I think Bernard gave a very good example, how they did it. During his years, they demanded for organic professors. So it's like, actually we are saying, yeah, we can actually demand for the kind of disciplines and subjects and courses that needs to be included in our curriculum. So the students, we have a chance to show our voice, but I think that discussion can be picked up so that you don't turn out to be activists that will be thrown out of the university, because we want also you to complete your studies. But the message was very clear, that there is also need to embrace what is going on at the moment, but also look for ways with which we can have universities have in their curriculum organic agriculture embraced as well. And finally, there is the need to engage more with policymakers and also showing examples that have worked. This issue came up a bit in the course of the day, and more has come up in this discussion. And finally, even in this state of Friesland, there was a huge discussion that the soils can only support grasses. Yeah? Can it do more? And yet we are singing about diversification. And someone said, vegetables can do very well. Research can also show what else can we do with our soils. Thank you very much.
It definitely doesn't go.
Just before, he asked me a question, what do you do? I'm the director of Biovision Africa Trust based in Nairobi. Those of you who are in my session in the morning, you heard from me. I'm an organization founded by none other than Hans. He was once Director General of ECPA in 1995 to 2005, and during that time he founded Biovision Foundation, and later in 2009 he founded Biovision Africa Trust. After I did my postdoc with ECPA, on finishing my PhD doctorate in Cornell, his CEO said, hey David, come and join us, and I did from 2011. So that's what I've been doing, and I'm also coordinating the Continental Initiative Ecological Organic Agriculture.
Stay.
Thank you. And I'm also a member of the IFAM board.
Exactly. Okay, now, he said many important things, even though I was heckling him to go quicker. It's good. Who wants to pick up that last point about what could Friesland's agriculture? Here's an African saying a challenge to Friesland. I agree with you completely, completely. Why is Friesland growing only cows and grass? They've gone silent.
I'm looking at each other.
Potatoes, come on. What could it be doing? Come on, speak. The lady behind you. a challenge from Africa.
She's doing pigs, and they're fed by the remains of our vegetables. We have 2 acres of permaculture vegetables and fruit, and we're trying to prove, and we're almost there, that with only 2 acres we can generate our income for our farm. So, if you want to come and look, Hof in Subrandeborn, you're most welcome. We need a lot of research and spread words and find ways how we can help farms that are now only dairy farming or only potatoes or only beets, how we can become more general farms with more different products that can be bought by local people, and local is also Amsterdam, it's around the corner, but more directly between the farmer and the consumer. That's what we try to find out.
Yeah. Just before you go, yes, why can't you make that community-supported agriculture go beyond the 2 acres?
Sorry?
Why don't you get that community-supported agriculture be beyond the 2 acres?
Or put it differently, how could you be grown?
We don't want to grow, we want to multiply.
So, you're from Britain, isn't it?
Me.
Yeah, you're Britain. Yeah. I think everything will change after the Brexit. Because we grow here grass and produce milk because we fed London over few centuries. So I hope that in future we will look to other opportunities for growing crops and probably vegetables, and not only grass, because we're in a green desert now. And I hope that will change, really, because our landscape was beautiful. It's a desert now, and I hope it will be fruitful.
That's the point. I think David's question was really, really important. It actually goes to the heart of everything that all the speakers have said about the vision for the future of organics. What are we doing? It's about land use. And land use for feeding people or for feeding cows.
By the way, our most famous export product is horses.
Okay. And you eat the horses? No, exactly. Okay, any more questions for David or for that group? Okay, you go. Good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next group now is, that was one Hans, now it actually is the second Hans. This Hans.
You're sure? The right hands? I have to excuse Jan Willem Eresman because he had to leave soon, so he asked me to give the feedback on our section on true costing. And we had an interesting discussion, I think, both on the method itself and some very diverse applications of true costing. And I think everyone accepted that it was a tool which has to be looked at with some caution, work in progress, need more data, lots of uncertainties, so we more or less agreed on these issues, but all agreed that it's still a useful tool, because otherwise we would have a very depressing session. And I think the most depressing statement was by John Hughes. He said, well, food prices, are they too high, too low? Think about the price of the risk of total system collapse. And then everyone went silent. But anyway, this was some discussions on the method itself. I think we're doing something and we're making progress. The applications were quite different. There was an application presented by Honor Eldridge and one by myself. Honor Eldridge about the true cost of the UK food system, and mine was about the true cost of nitrogen use and nitrogen emissions in Europe. And it was a miracle. We had more or less the same conclusion, that the direct cost, so the GDP kind of cost, consumer spendings on food in the UK was about the same as the external, the hidden cost of the food system. And my conclusion was that the external cost of nitrogen pollution by agriculture is about the same amount as the money earned by farmers selling their crops. So we agreed, which was wonderful. And Others said they had some good ideas on improving the system, something like including the waste, the external cost involved with using packaging materials, so the plastics. That was an idea, and she had a great question about how do we value nature. And she said she found a number from the European Commission, and there was no reference whatsoever to how they did it, but it was something like 3% of the GDP. So I think the big unknown is still the value of biodiversity or nature. I also had a little extension on using costing to find the optimal, societal optimal of nitrogen fertilization in European agriculture. And if you use the true costing values method I developed, you come to the conclusion that the optimal fertilization level is about 25–30% lower than the current fertilization level. So this would mean that if you use the true costing to support organic agriculture, I think it works, but you don't come to the conclusion that you should ban synthetic fertilizer. And I have maybe discussed, I don't think you need to ban synthetic fertilizer. I mean, there's over-application, no doubt about it, and the system that is producing and distributing the fertilizer, maybe there's also something to be improved, but synthetic fertilizer itself, the nitrogen in the synthetic fertilizer is not more or less toxic than the nitrogen in the organic fertilizers, if you use it in a sensible way. Then there were two other applications, completely different. One by I have to look at the name again, Bavo van Itzert, on how you can use true costing to find a fair and true price for organic products, both for the farmer and for the consumers. And they didn't have the answer yet, but he was very happy that he managed to get a project going with Wageningen University, working on it for the next years to see how true costing can help them to establish this true or fair price for organic producers and organic consumers. So, and very important also as a tool for communication, because I think everybody agrees that there's no doubt that the great value of true pricing, it helps to make your point, and it helps to communicate certain issues. The final one was by Niels Dijkman, who's also from, say, the regular business. He's working on a true costing tool to inform private companies and financing sector about how they can change, improve their business to be prepared for the future. He used the word magic, there was something magic about it. Magic formula, wow. So he's a believer, that's good. But he had a good story about that if you think about true costing, the scale is very important. So if you look at a private company, they have different scales, time-wise, space-wise, than if you talk to a European government or a national government. So if you apply true costing, look at the scales of things on which businesses take decisions. Some people take decisions for the next 2 or 3, 4 years. Then true costing gives you a different answer if you want to do a business case for the next 20 or 50 years. So I think both were very nice examples that true costing can help to improve, say, the established industry and the established financial sector to do things better. That's about it. From Hans too.
Yeah, from Hans too. Any questions on that? This was basically looking at prices and at costing, and everyone agreed the real cost is much higher than the actual cost consumers spend. But then we didn't go further. Question. Darkok, down here, please.
Well, it's partly a question and it's also partly a remark. I was also present at the group. For me, actually, one of the most striking conclusions was that true cost accounting is especially useful for communication, for making people more conscious about what are the different external effects of the current food system. And maybe also it might influence decision makers, maybe market parties. But it still left me with a very big question on what can be the policy use of true cost accounting. And at present we've got a lot of attention for that. The prize of today of the Future Policy Awards for the most visionary policy has been given to the TEEP Award, which is nice, but it also implies that this has policy consequences. And I ask myself very much, do we really need to make so much big calculations and studies with all these figures until I don't know how much cents behind the comma to influence politicians for communication?
Okay, you're asking a soil scientist who's gone into that work.
Okay.
Okay, justify your life.
Thank you. It's a good question. That's always the right answer, right? It's a good question. And I think there's two things to it. First of all, I think it's not an exercise just for fun. I mean, you have to compare things which are uncomparable, and these things which are uncomparable, for example, human health and ecosystems. I mean, some people say it's the same thing, it's the one health issue, but you're trying to compare incomparable things, and you have tools to make it easier, but the answer is always, it gives you one answer and raises 3 new questions. But then it would be an academic exercise. But there are examples, real examples in real life that true costing has a policy impact. And I think I made that remark in one of the rooms. If you look at the European air quality policy, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, they had to take a decision on whether to take on board more strict air pollution standards. And of course, all the car industry was against it, but still the true costing numbers, so they came up with the economic loss due to health impacts of air pollution, and these big numbers, they were of course hundreds of billions of euros of economic loss because of health loss and premature death in Europe due to air pollution. This made the European Commission decide to take on board these more strict air pollution standards. So there are examples, but this is an easier case for sure than using the true costing to convince the European Commission to ban synthetic fertilizer and move on to 100% organic. But it works, there are examples.
I'm going to give a counter-example, which is for 35 years, public health has costed the external costs of heart diseases and non-communicable diseases, and the food system has not changed at all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Not a question then. So, I'm not saying against Hans, I'm just saying these are really big issues, okay? And I think we would probably agree that this is a big debate, and we shouldn't be seduced, not that you are, seduced by the view that putting a cost on things automatically gets change. Actually, what led to the change, I would say, wasn't the costing that got the Commission to start changing policy. It was actually the pressure from public health that got it. So a figure is only as good as the social movements pushing for it, is my view. But what does a professor?
Can I come in here as a policy worker?
Good.
And raise hands, who's a policy worker in this? How many politicians are here?
Oh, that's different. That's completely different.
I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
So, I agree with this man and his question. It has to do with developing a common vocabulary. Of course, we need figures, even so many zeros behind the comma. As long as this is helping vocabulary, a common language, for instance, in the scientific field. And the scientific field has to come out much more, and we are trying our best in this conference, and I'm really impressed by the quality that is present. We need to come out much more, and much more direct, to people like me, policy workers, and to politicians, with the story that we don't have to wait for a brave Minister of Agriculture in the Netherlands, or some really good commissioners in Europe. We have to challenge at a municipal, provincial and national level as well. And this is where true costing to me, in my opinion, helps as an instrument, as a piece of vocabulary to tell them who are decision makers, there are more costs than you allow now to be calculated. Thank you.
Who's got the micro to the lady there, please? The small farmer.
Well, my question is on, I mean, you talk about the relation between health and food. And I know there's got to be a lot of research done yet. But what about the relation between climate change and agriculture? Because energy has already worked out this system And can't we use that system to include it in our agriculture policies? Wouldn't that be a quicker one? And climate change is very high on everybody's agenda.
Well, I think that's true, but it doesn't mean that you have to. Understanding the relationship between climate change, agriculture, and food security is quite a challenge. But I agree with you that currently climate change policies and concerns about climate change are driving system change more than concerns about human health and diets. So that's the way it is, but whether it's the right driver, I don't know, because when people get too eager to do things, that sometimes they take the wrong decision. And with respect to climate and agriculture, it's very complicated. In Northwestern Europe, everybody is so happy because we are going to have higher crop yields. But in the north of the United States, you're going to have higher crop yields. In the south of the United States, you're going to have lower crop yields. You can all find it in these IPCC reports saying what is the relationship between climate and agriculture. It's complex, but it's going to change things so fast. You get instability, societal instability. That's the big issue.
But that's not what I mean. What I mean is that when you stop tilting, you have more CO2 in the soil. So what I'm talking about is when you stop tilting and you get
tilling, yeah.
Sorry, you get more CO2 in the soil, and that amount could be maybe measured and be compensated for.
Did you listen to this talk of
No,
Professor Lal? No, not Professor Lal. He gave a great speech and he didn't challenge the importance of no tilling, but it's only part of the equation, not the biggest knob to turn if you want to change, when you want to prevent climate warming. But it's part of the equation, but it's not as simple as stopping with tilling.
Okay, go. Where is Darko? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the third report, quickly, is by Darko.
Yeah, I'll really try to be very quick. So it was a session on policy making. So basically, how to make it happen. With 4 outstanding speakers, very knowledgeable, very experienced, from all 4 from Europe. You have them in the program. So we have discussed a set of policy instruments that might be employed to support organic farming. So regulatory instruments, economic instruments, and informative instruments. Well, we have discussed which ones will be the most suitable. There is no common answer to that. We have also mentioned a couple of good examples, like in terms of creating an enabling environment for further widespread of organic farming. Denmark is a good example. For instance, in Copenhagen, they favor green procurement, which in return favors organic food. So about 90% of public canteens in Copenhagen now serve organic food. So that really creates also a kind of demand side, which is otherwise not there. Then, for instance, a good example is also from Croatia, where farmers applying for EU financing programs under the Rural Development Program, they get, when they apply, they get extra points if they are organic farmers. So that's well, that we have discussed all sorts of common agriculture policies issues, both related to the current period and the upcoming period. Nick Lumpkin provided a very good framework on why to support organic farming, what are the problems with it. There was an interesting idea that the organic movement should recapture, so to speak, and own again more the organic concept, because at the moment in many countries it is kind of too much owned by the state. Sometimes the state or the government is heavily influenced by all kind of commercial interests. So Nick said, well, we should consider it as an open source concept and regain the power over the institutions. So that's an interesting example. Well, then there was also a proposal to raise legal requirements and industry norms. So that will be more related to the legislative set of instruments. But again, that has also downsides, because when you over-regulate, you get another set of problems. Well, again, we discussed a lot about EU policies, and one of the problems is, for instance, that in some countries, like in Wales, they had a very good program supporting organic farming, but then all of a sudden they stopped. They said, we ran out of money. So that had a tremendous negative impact on organic farming sector. So continuity is one of the elements that we identified as being something very important for further push and pull of organic farming. Well, we discussed many other issues, but I think I better stop here.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions on policy frameworks? Do you agree with this? The continuity? The question here.
I grew up in a political family. My mother was in Congress, and the one thing I learned, we have to vote for the right parties with the right policies. And in Germany, we had the experience when we had a Green minister, things really moved. And she set the goal of 20%, and then she was not minister, and the goal is still not achieved. While Hikim shows us the goal is 100%. So it starts with us and our voting power. If you want to have different policies, policies are set by politicians very much, and they can be influenced. And they can be elected or not elected.
Did you just...
Yeah, we briefly touched upon that issue. It's absolutely right, because when we vote, well, we do vote, but also we vote daily by choosing this or that food. So that's another kind of voting casting.
Hans, done here.
The other way out, I mean, democracy can be a devil and an angel, but with respect to the big issues, I mean, most countries now are discussing to get the real important issue out of the reach of democracy, like having a climate law and saying we're going to have, and maybe you could think about something on food also. Is that so? The really important thing should not be left to democracy.
No, we need enlightened absolutism.
No. If you do too much, then you end up with a Pol Pot kind of system, so you don't want to do that. But for the Netherlands, for example, we don't leave building higher dikes against the sea to democracy. They want to say, it doesn't work. You have to make long financial commitments to make it work. And some things should not be left to democracy, or not to the system, the democratic system we have right now.
I think that's a very interesting example. It's about collectivism versus the individual's right to choose. I personally have written and argued strongly against the consumer votes theory. It's a theory. It says leave it to markets, individual consumers. If they want organics, they'll buy organics. That way you don't get growth of markets. So you're right, it's a very important for you people. This is a really important debate about how do you shape policy frameworks so that you get population change. If you want the table to move, you won't get it just by individual choice. It has to be a collective choice. It has to be, that's why in the Netherlands you have the Mulder system. The Mulder system, okay, some people shaking their hand, it's about the common purpose, the common good, as opposed to the individual choice. Vanda.
Yeah, I think democracy's got so messed up in recent times because it was the case that representation took care because you had a welfare state whose policies were already defined by the collective good and regulating the individual bad. And what's happened in these last few decades, we worked on the IFG and the Forum on Globalization, is basically the state has become a corporate state. And the formal democracy of just voting has swung so much into fear and hate And therefore we need a deeper democracy. I don't think we can chuck it, because a dictatorship of any kind at this time would be terrible. It would be fascism, which is growing, thriving in so many parts. And I think what we need is a deepening of democracy, and I see it as recognizing we are part of the earth and living as Earth citizens, and in our daily lives reclaiming our power to shape the world.
Okay, that's a good philosophical point on which to end. It is a practical. I was exactly going to say that. It is, but it's a practical issue that comes out of the philosophical choices. That's the point. Come on, we do. Okay, the fourth group. Go on. No.
Well, a link to the innovation session. Well, we figured out something that was really an eye-opener to me, and that is that since early 90s, policy innovation hasn't taken place very much in terms of policy instruments and good examples that would move organic sector.
I think that, well, this is becoming my area. There's been a lot of experimentation.
It's not your area.
Yeah, no, there is. There's a lot of policy experimentation, but what there isn't is the development of policy institutions. That's the difference. That we haven't got the regulations, we haven't got the frameworks actually there. We've got the ideas, we've got little islands of experimentation, we've got some very interesting values, but we haven't actually changed the institutions. So I would add that to Vandana's practicality. The fourth group, Julia. Where's Julia? She's here. Oh, you're not Julia? No, you're allowed to look to me. It says Julia here.
Yeah.
Formerly Julia.
I've always been Louise. Yeah. And we talked about innovation and transition, and that was very exciting. And I'm going to mix all the presentations to one sort of soup that I'm going to present you. So when we talk about innovation and transition, it's a sort of journey. It's a journey from each and individual person. It's a journey from us as a society. Or as somebody put it, you might like to do an immigration to yourself and to your own soil and to your own thing, but you're immigrating. And we also found that there was a momentum. And the momentum, we can almost feel it, we can touch it. There's a lot of things going on, and there was a wonderful example of this food transition coalition that there is in the Netherlands that basically says, we are the change already, and we also want the system to change. So we need a paradigm shift at all levels. And this coalition is get out of our own comfortable bubble and look for others, look for dialogue with those who do not think yet as us, listen to them, and see whether we can make the transition ourselves and think about transition models. We need new initiatives and new experiments. And we also need to dare to dream and to put some dots in the horizon. That's where we want to go together. And so, for instance, there's the idea to have a national soil agreement in the Netherlands. So talking about politics, that would be a wonderful thing to have. We also said that this change is something else than scaling up. Because scaling up sounds like that we're going to do a lot of the same that we already have. But we talked actually about the niches that we have, and we would like to have a diversity of niches, or if you like, a sort of kaleidoscope of initiatives that is there. And we also agreed that if we have more diversity in that, that actually our system in itself will be more resilient. And so we talked about also thinking on the individual. Don't think on the average. Don't think that we can scale up things, but think about relationships. Relationships with our earth, relationships with each other. Also about craftsmanship. And also think about when we eat what kind of messages we get. But I would add to that also what kind of messages we convey by the things that we eat. And so we need a change of minds, and we need to change, and we need to train our imagination so that we are there and we can grasp the momentum when it comes. And so we then got very wonderful examples on how we can communicate all this change and all the road that we want to go to. And our colleague from Sweden was so nice to share with us some value areas, if you like. And when we talk about organic agriculture and more sustainable agriculture, more sustainable world, this really appeals to values that we all have about universalism and benevolence. And so if we talk about our work, we should actually relate to those values that all other people have, all those who maybe are not yet or are thinking different, but we know that they also have those values, and that's where we can connect to. And this is then also the way in how we frame our messages and move to this transition so that we can go this journey or this immigration together.
Okay, this is a very nice way to report the fourth group, exactly as you said. Any thoughts on that? Movements, picking up on the democracy, not just movements, not scaling up, but democracy and diversity of niches. What did people think? Mrs. Pig over there. That's her, wrong one. This is Mrs. 2 Acres, not scaling up, it's spreading.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm very glad you're here, by the way. It's very good.
Yeah,
Your
I'm sorry.
teacher's pet, always. You always want someone to come up and keep going. Very good.
I don't.
Keep going.
Well, anyhow, I'm getting very enthusiastic by this bottom-up movement, and we in the north here in Friesland have this netwerk duurzame dorpen. It's the network of sustainable villages, and it actually started with energy. They're starting to have their local energy cooperatives, and these local energy cooperatives, we're now trying to see to spread them to food and to health systems. And I mean, that's very inspiring to me, at least, to see from the local networks and local small-scale institutes, cooperatives, to get this change going on. Because if we can reconnect locally and say how we want our environments to be reshaped, we get this new legislation going on here now in the Netherlands, Omgevingswet. I hope it will give us an opportunity to get also legislational funding or support to start our own systems without the big groups and companies and
okay.
to start.
Yes.
Did you discuss that in your group at all, about bottom-up and top-down and all of that politics?
To some sort, yes.
Okay. Question here.
Actually, I got the microphone. So.
Go ahead.
What,
Yes, our communication expert.
Just briefly on that question. We did speak about, you so nicely said about sometimes you migrate on your own farm when you actually convert from conventional to organic farming. And we were all discussing that change and transition, it doesn't start between the ears, in the brain. It starts often in your heart. And that's not something you communicate when you want conventional farmers to convert to organic. But it's something that there was someone in the audience who said that. I don't know where he is. Yeah. But this is actually something that happens. So that is a little bit what we were discussing on the root level. We were more philosophical. But true change starts from within yourself. And then you work with the communities around you. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Hans, you wanted to go.
I have a question to the 2 acres lady. Sorry, I never got your name. Have you ever thought about local currencies? This is something which is happening all over the place. So actually to localize your food system, that you start with your own currency, so then the money stays within. So I'm just wondering, because I never heard in any of the talks today anything about this, but I think it's coming and it will be helpful to create these communities where their own money, so it stays within the community.
Can you, the person behind you?
I thought she would first react. I think it's a very good point being made about the heart, because in so many things that we talk about the numbers, the true costs. I mean, for how long are you going to calculate the cost of everything, while at the same time this planet, is really not doing well? I'm sorry, but honestly, I am quite afraid of my life. Yeah, honestly, I am. And sometimes in these academic discussions, I really miss this. We talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Politicians talk, everyone talks, but sorry, but there are some really badass companies who are really not interested in the well-being of people or anyone. And they are really damaging this one bowl that is in a very huge empty space with nothing else around. And we're on it, and we have nowhere else to go. And we can feel pain, and we can suffer. So we will, if it happens. So, I think it's quite important. And for me, this is a really strong, actually for me, this is where everything starts, at this feeling. Like, okay, shit, I don't care what I'm gonna do. I don't care if I'll have a big income or not, because it doesn't matter. Because there's only one thing that matters in my life, and that's whether I can live at all on this planet with other people or not. And yeah, that's just what I wanted to say.
I think that's fantastic what you say. You're showing actually, if we flip that around, everybody can do something. This is how we build up our momentum. And that's actually where we come from now. This is the most exciting time actually to do that. Yes.
Okay, the gentleman here and then.
Remark on the question of Hans, who was asking for local currencies. And I wanted to point out that here in Holland we have a system, a network of alternative currencies. We have a system called United Economy. It is part of the Trouw Top 100 in sustainability this year, number 31, so by heart. That is a business-to-business system. But under that we have Circular Nederland, which has many currencies in big cities like Amsterdam, like Rotterdam, like Utrecht, Groningen, etc. So there are already working experiments with local currencies here in Holland. And they are very easy to connect to, I can tell you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Comment at the back, and then back to Louisa and we move on.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's on. Speak out.
It's on, okay. We've heard a lot of great things today, and I fully agree with you that there is a great sense of urgency. We have really no time to lose. There are so many academic views which are known, and I want to stress something. I think everybody should pay much more attention on the public relations. How to get everything across. How to influence the people. How to get the people be more aware of what is going on, and that we have no time to lose. And also about all the results of all the researchers here have been doing. Thank you.
So as you can see, we had quite an inspiring session. It still radiates here. And we wanted you to be a part of another thing that happened in our session. We had a wonderful poem there, and I want to invite Jan Dijk to please bring that poem to us. So can you beam it up?
you can read it yourself. It's because the poem is as follows. Eating is meeting, a season, a region, a farm and a farmer, their soil and their sun. Feel what they bring you. Do digest their message. You'll find being served to comply to your zeal. Right here and right now. And for me it was important to finish with a poem to speak to people's hearts and not only to their heads, because the heads are very nice, but the hearts make decisions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. You've been very patient. We started very late and we've ended later. I now hand back to Martine. So thank you very much. That was a very rich discussion from many very good, clearly rich discussions in the groups. But now we say thank you, I think, to Martine.
I say thank you to you, if that's okay. First of all, you'll find the presentations on our website soon. Wow, what a day this was. It's really incredible. All this energy from older people, younger people, many younger people. We heard all kinds of knowledge, all kinds of solutions, all kinds of theory, all kinds of practice, but especially inspiration. I'm not going to repeat all that, but I just would like to say as a final word, we need to leave behind a world where it is normal to restore ecosystems, where it's normal to renew the soil, where it's normal to use only agriculture methods which are conducive to these two, where it's normal to consume in a way that's conducive to those as well, which will probably include much less dairy, much less meat, much less sugar, more local, and not waste any food. It was mentioned several times today already, the court verdict a few days ago on the CO2 reduction in the Netherlands. I sincerely hope that people will not overrate the impact of this, because it's incredible. And we hope that our government will listen to that. I want to thank a number of people. I'm not sure if I have to thank the climate change for the beautiful weather today, but it was great. But first of all, I want to thank the participants, many young people. And please, I hope that you will follow your heart in your career. I started as a medical doctor, I became an organic farmer, I ran an organic restaurant because I saw the need for a new food system. I hope you'll find your own way in this, in many, many different parts of the world. I want to thank the speakers. This week it is exactly 25 years ago that we had a very interesting, important conference for the first time for policymakers on organic farming in a small castle in the Czech Republic. There were some people, Bernard was there, Darko was there, Nick Lampkin was there, Volkert was there. And we see now these people again, but another group of wonderful quality people came from all over the world to join us on this day here in Oosterwolde. Can you imagine? They came even though they got notice at a very late stage, as we explained this morning. Thank you all for coming here. Thank you very much. An applause for all the speakers. I would like to hand out one bag to our host, Anne-Jan. I think Litterstyle has shown its enormous hospitality during this week, and we thank Anne-Jan for his vision, because your company is doing unbelievable work, and for all of it, what you have offered us today. Thank you, Anne-Jan. Also, I want to thank the municipality of Oost-Stellingwerf, the provinces of Friesland and Groningen, the provinces of Friesland and Groningen, SNN and the EU, and especially also the Vereniging Circulair Friesland for their support for this conference. I would like to thank the technical staff and the catering staff. I would like to thank the core team of the Soil Food Week. Theo, Marliese, Martin, Ingrid, Emiel, Helentje, thank you very much. I want to thank the volunteers who have been working behind the screen very much. Noortje, who did all the logistics for the traffic. Johannes, number of Van Hal students, thank you very much. And I want to thank Bartelt, my son, for driving so many people from everywhere to come here. And we will give him a nice hand as well. We'll come here. But I would like to call Herma and Darko on the stage for also receiving a few words of thanks. Is Herma here? No, she's always working, huh? Okay, Darko. Herma, oh, there she is. Okay. And there must be one more here. Yes.
Otherwise it's my fault.
So, Herma was thrown in the deep water just a few weeks ago. And as I said, we didn't have much time, but she did a tremendous job in arranging just about everything. Thank you very much, Herma. And Darko, well, my friend and companion for so many years in Avalon and all the adventures we had all over the world. Darko, this was a tremendous conference. And given the fact that we had really 3 weeks to organize it, it's unbelievable. Thank you so much. So people, this is it, and it was wonderful that you all could join us here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.